good morning and welcome back to Erasmus TV. Our guest of today is Minister of Education, Ingrid van Engelshoven. Very welcome, it's good to have you here. And on the other side of the table we have Rutger Engels, who I have been accidentally, but frequently, calling Rutger Magnificus because he's our Rector Magnificus. I'm trying to break the curse here by saying it out loud.
Very good, yeah. Successfully.
We saw our Prime Minister, Mark Rutte, yesterday with Corona/Health Minister Hugo de Jonge. And they announced, well, at least some things that can make us happy again. How are you feeling? Happy to go back to the hairdresser?
That was not my first priority, to be honest. But I think it's really good that we make steps. And of course, we already had discussion with the minister this morning about what it means for the higher education, for the universities, and that those plans have to be developed in the next couple of days and weeks. But I think the actions that are taken are really promising and give me a lot of confidence that we can start up campus life again. I mean, limited and in certain conditions, but still.
Yeah, because yesterday it was shortly mentioned, higher education, that we maybe can start in June. But isn't it more easy to just tell all universities to keep the doors closed till September?
No, but that's not what we want to do. And what I discussed earlier with universities, there's a big need to open up for exams, for practical educations, for some working groups. So I'm doing the utmost to make sure that there will be some room for opening in June. We're still puzzling on it because, well, it means more people on the street, more students in public transport. So it's quite a puzzle, but we're working hard on it to make something possible in June.
Yeah, because how busy are you? Because we had an episode on work pressure a few episodes ago, and it was emphasized how important it is to check in with people. How are you doing? Is it still manageable?
Yes, it is, but it's, well, as for everyone, it are very difficult and complex times. And what we see is, well, we have all kinds of questions on the table, and every time we have a solution for one of the questions, we have 10 new questions on the table. So it are complex times, and but what I'm very glad to be here because it's so important to stay connected to the academic world, to students, to professors, to teachers, and hear their stories, see what we can do. Yes, and it are very busy times, very complex, but well, yesterday the good news was that the spread of the virus is going down. There's a little more pressure on hospitals, so we can give more room to society, and that was the good news. So that gives some hope, and that's, I think, what a lot of people are looking for, some hope, some perspective on the new normal society.
Yeah, but it isn't just nice to check in with everybody how they are doing. It's also relevant because we see among students, but also among well, employees of universities, that worries and stress increase. And when you were here 2 months ago on campus, just shortly, you mentioned your own burnout in your 30s. Does it make you look differently at all those worries?
Yes, and well, when I was here before the corona crisis, we already discussed the work pressures among students, among staff, and well, these are times where everyone's under a lot of pressures, and especially teachers, they had to make online education possible in a week or in 2 weeks, and they did. It is quite a miracle what happened and what was made possible. So yes, and I see that they must have done a lot of work pressure, and then doing it on your own from your home, where maybe you have a couple of children who needed their education, or you have a partner who's also working at home, and you hear each other's telephone conversations. That's difficult. So yes, it is important in these days to check in with each other, to see each other's needs, and to work together on perspective.
Yeah, but you of course know from your own perspective how important it is to keep in touch.
Yes.
Is it something you talk about with all the other ministers?
Yes, and well, we have our our meetings where we are in touch. But even with my own staff, most of them work at home. I don't see them, so it's very important to see them on on video. And to check in, how are you doing? How is it at home? And what I see is the relief and the happiness with some of them if they are allowed to come into the office for a couple of hours to see their colleagues again. And it's so important. What we see in this crisis that how important social contact also with colleagues, with fellow students is for your own welfare. So yes. We stay at home, but we have to stay in touch. That's very, very important.
We gave also students an opportunity to ask you some questions. And in those questions, you see really reflected that they worry that the student loans and that financial burden is getting like a heavy weight around their necks. We have also a student who sent in a video question. This is student Florian.
Dear Minister, many students worry about their future perspectives. They worry about their financial position, which has worsened significantly during the last couple of years. Furthermore, they worry about their career perspectives due to lack of job opportunities at the labor market and the flexible nature of it. What would you say to these students, and can they expect measurements from the government to help them?
Yes, I understand their worries, and especially for young people, this is a very difficult time because they're the group least affected by the virus. And what we see in the figures,
health-wise, yes.
They stay healthy. They have a small share in spreading the virus, and still a lot of what's very important for them: job perspective. Their study, their jobs, but also their free time, seeing each other in the pub, that's all not possible. There are no festivals this summer. So yes, it's a very, very difficult time for young people. I think it's very important that we work on perspective. So as a government, I think one of the most important things we have to do is make sure that after this crisis, our economy goes on again, and there are job opportunities for young people. And these days, where I'm especially looking at is those students who have a delay in their studies and who were hoping to finish their studies this summer, but will have to come back next year. And what we are looking at, how can we compensate them financially for those extra months they will have to pay for their studies. So with my colleagues, I'm working on that plan these days, and we hope to have found a solution very soon.
Yeah, but there are, of course, quite more students. Not only are finishing their studies, you also already said not going to give a refund in college money, but there are also students who really have a delay. For example, students who study medicine. Mm-hmm. But there are also students, student Tessa emphasized in her mail to us, they're out of work. She says self-employed people get some subsidy from the government. Why isn't there support for us, financially support now, not just a promise that we might have a job in the future?
Well, it's quite complicated, but because what we see is, well, there is compensation for people who lose their jobs. Mm-hmm. And with every group where we find a solution for, there are new groups who don't fit in the measures we take. and that's well, we search for it every day. But what we also see is we can't compensate everyone because it's just not doable. Our Minister of Social Affairs, well, he tries to reach all these groups who lose their job and lose incomes, but the amount of people who have to become is so big that it's just not doable to fine-tune it so that it fits every person. So what I'm doing is, make sure that those people where the biggest needs are, and we see it for, students in the last year who have a delay, we will compensate then. Because, student in the first, second or third year, there is a chance you will do it in your normal year. So we have to do it step by step. And the problems is huge. And also the message we have to bring to everyone, we can't compensate everyone for everything because there are losses all over society. I'm also responsible for the cultural sector. They
you
also
gave a check for that already, 300 million.
Yes, and still everyone says it's not enough, and that we'll have to do more. And that's small employers, bars, restaurants. Well, they have great losses. A lot of companies will go bankrupt. So yes, the task is huge. And what we're looking at is where do we find the biggest needs, and how make sure that we compensate students who really have a delay that can't be compensated in time anymore. And I think one of the most urgent things we have to do is give young people perspective again. So I hope in opening up society a little bit and making sure economy goes on again, and we will work on their future jobs.
Yeah, but students are now also quite worried on the quality of their studies. A student letter writes to us that she's concerned about all the different ways studies are dealing with this crisis. But it's not just studies, of course. Faculties are dealing differently. Universities are even dealing with it differently. To what extent does the ministry support all those different ways of dealing?
First and foremost, it's, I think, the task of universities themselves to continue education at their best. I think it's a small miracle what happened in online education, and continue education as much as possible. And of course, it's different than it was, and everyone hopes that we will have a kind of hybrid form of education as soon as possible again. But I think universities have done a great job in switching to an online education, and they're doing their utmost best. And what I do is stay connected, see what we can do, and also in continue financial stability for universities so they can keep up the good work.
Yeah. Are you getting enough support, Rutger?
From whom do you mean?
Well, from the ministry. She's across the table.
We just had a long discussion about it this morning. So what I want to stress is two things. So we actually, it's what you're saying is that we made a transition to online learning in 3 weeks, what normally takes 3 years. And we do that on adrenaline, basically. But that can't go on. So we just did a survey among students, but also among employees. And what you clearly see is that they experience a lot of work stress, and they already did before. Mm-hmm. I mean, so this actually adds to the pile. And we have all kind of support programs for them that they can deal with the stress.
Yes,
but that doesn't take away the sources of the stress, which is basically too much work. So what I think, so I'm incredibly proud on our lecturers, on our teachers, and our support staff, but I do think that we need to help them more, and that is basically by taking some away of that burden. And we promised students 2 weeks ago that we would guarantee education next year. And that's a big promise, and we will do that, but it needs extra efforts and also some extra compensation.
Who has to give you that extra compensation?
Well, we don't have it, so that's a discussion.
Yeah.
That's a discussion we had, and I think it's important to make that to say that explicitly. But I also want to say that I'm truly proud on what already the university is doing, and also the universities in general, and together with the Ministry of Education.
And those worries, of course, not only financially it's a big thing, but one of the tools universities are increasingly using is proctoring exams, so automated homemade exams with digital surveillances. There are a lot of concerns also about that. For example, on privacy. Do you advise universities on that topic?
Well, universities themselves have to see how do we deal with exams. And what I see is what they do is try alternatives, open book exams, assignments. But for some of the exams, there's no alternative. If you have to organize examination for a couple of hundreds of students, sometimes there is no alternative. What we say is, if you have online exams at home, it has to be compliant to all our privacy laws. So no unneeded data collection. You have to get rid of the data as soon as possible. I heard some students say, well, they even sell the data. And that can't be, just can't be. And we have an authority in the Netherlands on data protection, and they do research on whether or not these forms of examination are compliant to our privacy laws.
Yeah, and then, of course, the ways.
But I understand the worries of all the students. Of course, it's not what you want in an ideal situation, but it's, well, we aren't in an ideal situation. We have to deal with it. But I do understand their worries, and that's why we stress, also in my conversations with universities, it has to be compliant to all the privacy laws.
Yeah. There are, of course, ways of, well, taking exams, but there are also a way of grading exams. We got a mail from a student, Nico, and he emphasized to us that there are branches that really tell us, that really watch their study average. Or we have a small a picture of an anonymous RSM student who has a complete rant in his or her rant. He puts the question as this: do you have the balls to change the system to pass or fail? Are you going to change?
Well, we have discussions about this, and there are also opposite sides to this. So I mean, the problem also with pass and fails, of course, you don't get a score. For students who actually want to have a higher score, for instance, because they want to have a good score to go to some master, because it's selective, they are not really in favor of this. So I think it's a dilemma. I know that some schools are considerate, and we talk about this with the schools and with the exam committees. It's not an easy one.
No, and it's not an easy one. But I think a lot of teachers are getting this question. So, would you recommend this? Yes or no?
It's not up to me. Mm-hmm. I think it's up to the universities, it's up to teachers, and it's up to exam committees to look at it. And I think we have organized it within the university community to have a good discussion on what do we do in exams. We have the exams committee, and they have to discuss the issue. It's not up to me.
No. We have another video question, actually for an employee this time, and it's emphasizing that they are quite worried on work pressure, and I think this is something that's up to you.
In the past 6 weeks, my team and I, as well as many other faculty and support staff members of this university and throughout the country, have been working for 10 to 14 hours each day from our homes in order to enable the transition for our students to participate in online education. How can you justify that the government announced budget cuts of billions of euro for higher education, while at the same time handing out subsidies to companies like KLM?
You didn't announce these cuts? But you came up with a plan that if we would have to make cuts, they could possibly go in higher education?
No, this is a big misunderstanding. What all the departments have to do every 4 years and report to Parliament is make kind of a plan if you get what will you do with 20% plus in your budget and 20 plus minus. It's kind of a theoretical exercise, and well, the unhappy thing was that we had to publish this in the midst of the corona crisis. It's just what Parliament asked us to do. There were plans to have these kind of budget costs in healthcare, which no one can imagine at this moment. So this is really something we are not going to do. And the news is I got to have stability in the budget for also for higher education. I just got a compensation of $500 million in my budget to keep financing the financial base of universities stable. So it's the other way around. And don't worry about this 20% minus.
Yeah, but I do think that it worries a lot of people who work here. For example, people are doing a PhD and their contracts are, well, ending and they can't do the research they might need to. And I believe you did a suggestion that universities could give them a contract. But I also spoke to faculties who simply don't have the finance for that. Is there something the university or you can do to compensate those people who can't afford it?
Yeah. Well, I will have a discussion this afternoon with universities, with our scientific organization, to see how we're going to handle this, because we see a lot of delays in research. So, yes, we have to do something about the contracts, and it's, well, something we will have to find a solution for together. And the difficult thing in these times, it's you can't find a solution for everything and saying, well, extra money for this, extra money for that. Yes, we need extra money for compensation somewhere, but the problems are so big, we have to be creative together. But this is exactly what we are going to talk about this afternoon. How do we make sure that there is a continuation of research and continuation of contracts, and we all will have to do something together there to make it possible.
Yeah. A few of your colleague rectors, for example, the one in Maastricht, said they are quite worried, but also in Leiden. They weren't pleased, if I could put it like that. How do you feel about all this financial insecurity for the future, perhaps?
Yeah, it's clear that we have them, and we also discussed it with the minister, of course. And I think there are different ways to look at this. First of all, we have more expenses right now because of the corona crisis, and also in research, because basically all the research now, experiments, lab experiments, all kind of research in all domains is basically determined, has stopped. So that it has tremendous costs. And also the consequences for PhD students, who are a vulnerable group of people because they have temporary contracts. So I really worry about that. I also worry about the influx of new students. So it is quite unpredictable how many students we will have here next academic year. And if there's a serious drop in students, we will encounter severe consequences from that. It's really hard to predict right now because we simply don't know. We don't know how many students will actually at some point in August sign up and show up. So it's quite unpredictable, but I definitely worry about that.
Yeah, and if we can wrap it up, so financially, universities are going to have a hard time. There will probably be fewer international students, and those are more lucrative than Dutch students because they pay the full amount. But there might even be less students at all. So And of course, let's not forget all the extra money universities, I know the Erasmus did, to put in online education and to make that transfer possible. But also, as you say, funding for science is under pressure. And you're not only the Minister for Higher Education, but also for sciences.
Yes.
Is this something you have to fight for back in The Hague?
Yes, of course. And there are worries about budgets in every ministry because, look at the Ministry of Healthcare, public transport needs extra funding, municipalities need extra funding, police needs extra funding. So it's huge, the problems we have, but I think my job is to make sure that, because for our own future, education is of the utmost importance. Scientific research. We see these days, what more proof do we need that science is, one of our biggest assets we have. And for example, what Erasmus University is doing with the Erasmus Medical Center and Delft University in working together, that's exactly what we need in these days. So what I try to do is convince everyone in The Hague that for our own future and to survive this, not only the corona crisis, but also the economic crisis that will follow from this, we need investments in higher education and in research. That's really key, not only in the Netherlands, but also in Europe. So I will also do it in Europe, because these are key investments for our own future. Yeah. It's not just spending, it's investing.
No, and just before we went into this recording, I saw an article that KLM is getting their financial help without too many, rules or questions with it, because it has priority. But we also want, of course, that the students here can someday work at big companies, but also they have to get good studies. How is it? You say we can't do it all, but in how, is a university a priority in this?
Yes, it's a big priority, and yes, we have to look at all the elements because KLM is important for the Dutch economy and to keep the economy going. That's also an importance of these students. And for KLM, it's a loan. It's not money they're getting; it's a loan, and these are guarantees. That's quite different than what we do. For university, because that's real spending of money. But yes, we have to do both. We have to see how do we keep our economy strong and growing again, and we have to invest in education, from primary education to higher education. We need a well-educated population for the future, and we need scientific research. So
and you will fight for this in The Hague.
Yes, and I think before Corona crisis broke out, we had a letter of the Ministry of Finance and Economy who say, for the growth of our economy, we need it's education first, it's science, it's research. And I think that's still what we believe in.
Yeah, and all the universities, including Erasmus, are getting a lot of international students. And I got this question from Academic Affairs. Is this coronavirus a reason for you to look differently at internationalization of, universities?
Well, internationalization still is very important for our higher education and for our economy. We need the internationals here. So, and it's very unpredictable what will happen. And I think we can't predict what will happen in August and in September. Are they going to enroll? Are they even able to come here? Will they start online? But I hope that we will keep international students here because it's so important for the quality of our education, the quality of our research, and for the future, the quality of our economy. We are an international country.
And there are also students who are, well, marked as seen sometimes as international students, but actually are quite Dutch. For example, the students in the Caribbean islands overseas. And they can't get here, and they can't enroll in another university because there simply isn't one. But they are, well, our students. And there is a crisis going on at the islands. They have it hard financially. How are you helping those students?
Well, we have, as a government, special programs to help the islands in the Caribbean to survive Corona crisis. And I'll be in touch with the ministries of education there to see how we can help students there who were planning to enroll in education, for example, in Rotterdam, can't come here, and how can we help them to make a start, for example, in online education, and hopefully they will be able to get here soon.
Yeah, there are some worries still of, well, we hear students saying this, that their online education isn't as much worth as the physical education. But there are, as you say, a lot of students who might start with online education. What would you say to them?
Well, I say grasp every opportunity you have to start your education. Of course, it's different, and I'm very happy that a lot of universities said, well, we hope we can start in a hybrid way in September. I hope we'll be able to give some opening to universities already in June. But please grasp every opportunity you have to start your studies, because it's still the best investment you ever can do in your own future.
Yes, online, hybrid, physical, it's still the best investment you can make. Rutger, last question to you. What would you say to students who might want to enroll here?
Oh, that they should come to us. So
that's not a surprise, yes.
They should come to when it's possible, we invite them here on campuses in Rotterdam, and they will have a wonderful time and have really good studies. This is one of the top universities in the world with extremely good programs, and I'm welcoming all the students that want to come here. And I want to say one thing about the really good point the minister is making. The solution to this crisis, both health-wise as economically as society, lies in science and lies in the education of our bright students. And I think that's a message I want to give.
Well, thank you both for being here. Thank you all for watching. This was the episode of today, a bit longer than you were used to, but, well, we took the time and the opportunity we got. We're back on Monday, and then we will have another guest. He is an RSM alumnus, and he's part of the outbreak management team. So he's advising the ministry.
Yes.
But he's here on Monday. Thank you for watching. See you then.